It's so amazing when people tell me that electronic music has not got soul, and they blame the computers. They got the finger and point at the computer. It's like, there's no soul here. It's like, you can't blame the computer. If there's not soul in the music, it's because nobody put it there. And it's not the tool's fault.
Björk never wanted the spotlight. Fame was never the goal. She just wanted to be able to defy the boundaries of pop on her own terms. Debut was where she would burst away onto MTV and radio, but with her 1995 album Post, she became the innovative and unflinchingly adventurous musician we know today. Here she would paint from an unrivaled palette of sound: jazz, ambient, IDM, trip-hop, acid house, techno, and even show tunes, peppered with dial-tone atmospherics, crushing beats, and playful orchestration. It was musically promiscuous, bursting with the full spectrum of emotion, and like nothing the mainstream had encountered before. This is the story of Post, how Björk reinvigorated electronic music. By 1994, Björk Gudmundsdóttir had become an unlikely household name, despite her label One Little Independent estimating projected sales of 30,000 for her album debut. It instead quickly sold 600,000 copies worldwide within its first 3 months. It was not in fact her first brush with fame. She'd released her actual debut at the age of 11. A collection of pop covers that had managed to shift 5,000 units in her native Iceland, the equivalent of a gold record, making her a reluctant child star. Kicking back against this image and fueled by the introduction of punk to Iceland in 1979, Björk would join various aggressive punk, post-punk and goth groups throughout her teens, while studying classical music at the Barnum Musikskole. Her second brush with fame would not be restricted to her home country. Post-everything collective The Sugar Cubes would be rocketed to international fame after UK Music Weekly Melody Maker placed their 1987 single Birthday, His Otherworldly Vows and Spare Jangle as Single of the Week. Though she had grown up admiring Joni Mitchell,
through savage progress cuts the jungle.
the biggest influence on her swooping, eccentric vocal style was in fact her home country.
Iceland probably affected a lot how I sing, because I did spend a lot of time as a kid in nature, just walking outside to school or maybe in blizzards. It's just kind of like happened, and you would walk and there'd be no wind and you could be all quiet and whispery, and you would sneak down next to the moss and maybe sing a verse, and then you would stand up and run to a hill and sing a chorus. You have to do that quite loudly because the weather was strong.
Off the back of Birthday's success, they would sign with Elektra Records in the US, play Saturday Night Live, and support U2 on a stadium tour. In 1992, the year after their biggest hit, This wasn't supposed to happen. The Sugar Cubes would dissolve. From here, Björk would make her first steps towards a solo career. In Iceland, the Sugar Cubes are thought of as stubborn punks that refuse to grow up and still believe you can change things and do something new. Were the eccentrics in the corner? Were well known and respected, but were not popular. I'd like to achieve that position abroad, to get to do my little thing in the corner and get enough money to make another album. That would be perfect. Björk had been piecing together songs since her teens that didn't have the necessary edge for her various rock-oriented projects, most of which would end up on debut. It would represent a personal rejection of guitar music, adopting instead all things electronic, especially from the ambient, acid house, IDM, and trip-hop music scenes coming from the UK. A lot of people don't like dance music. They find it too strange. But I love it because it's so fresh and new, so strong and so romantic. What I also like is that anyone can have a go. It's very much like the atmosphere around punk. To better absorb this, Björk moved to the centre of this revolution of music creativity, bravely hurtling into the unknown, with her 7-year-old son in tow. I just decided I'm going to move to London. I'm going to be really selfish. I'm going to get all the instruments I want, all the noises and lyrics I like, and make all the music I can, because everybody's got to express their vision, and no two people are the same. I could happily go and die if I could say, I did my best, I made my sacrifices. It's as basic as that. Having previously sought out and worked with Manchester electronic music crew 808 State, providing vocals on their 1991 XL album. She would shape the majority of the songs on debut with that group's Graham Massey. Production was handled by Nelly Hooper, who had made his name working with the London-based neo-soul group Soul to Soul. Meeting through friends, Björk and Hooper had an instant connection. Big Time Sensuality was actually about when I first met Nelly Hooper. I think it's quite rare when you're obsessed with your job, as I am, when you meet someone who's your other half job-wise, and enables you to do what you completely want. Debut would earn her 5 UK Top 40 singles, adjoined to MTV Ready clips. And she would find herself on countless magazine covers. She was even asked to write a song for Madonna's 1994 album, Bedtime Stories. The UK music press especially were quick to comment on her alien presence, childlike manner, and general weirdness, focusing more on Björk than the actual music. But by early 1994, after 10 months of promotion, she was already thinking about album number 2. The first songs written for what would become Post were Army of Me and The Modern Things, composed in Manchester with Massey during those initial creative sessions for debut. It was felt that Army of Me especially didn't fit the record's dancey, carefree vibe, so was left off. I'm not sure why I wrote it. Maybe I felt their debut had been such a polite, shy album. There was a side of me that was so shy and such a beginner. I was very flattered when everyone loved Debut, but also a bit confused because it wasn't really me. Maybe Army of Me was an attempt to balance it out. The song is almost industrial in its heft, the backbone of its colossal pissed off beat, a sample of Led Zeppelin's When the Levee Breaks. Graham Massey came up with Army of Me's bass riff. I had written that melody earlier in Iceland. It matched very well together, I felt. I then did the sarcastic scratch noises in the chorus with a coin on a deep bass string that Graham sampled for me. Her voice discards the vocal acrobatics most associated with her. The verse is almost spoken and melodically flat. The lyrical intent was to motivate her younger brother into action, who was doing nothing with his life, yet moaning about his situation. Lest he face the wrath of his done with it big sister. As she explained to Q magazine, imagine you're in a club full of heavy metal types and grunge people. Army of Me is like someone's granny blasting out of the PA and saying, snap out of it, stop whining, wash your hair, smarten yourself up. Björk would also write Where Is the Line from Medulla about him, still unable to get his act together. With her opener in place, it was time to continue expanding the public's perception of Björk. Debut was Björk hesitantly stepping out into the world, seeing if she could put her ideas out there. As such, the songs are often restricted by pop convention. Post is her fully realizing herself, unafraid to hop from idea to idea, sound to sound. From the hard techno of Army of Me,
And if you complain once more,
to the big band jazz of It's Oh So Quiet,
you fall in love, simple.
alongside the orchestral trip-hop of Isobel, and the vibrant, Latin-flavoured house of I Miss You. I was very aware of it at the time, that I needed to be musically promiscuous, and have almost every song a different mood, style, and so on. The picture on the cover is me on Piccadilly Circus, too excited, too many things, bright lights, big city kind of thing, and me eager to consume. So my musical heart was scattered at the time, and I wanted the album to show that. This conflux of styles was aided by a greater cast of collaborators. Alongside Massey, regulars of the London club scene also joined the post sessions, including engineer Howie B and trip-hop wunderkind, Tricky. I met her in some club, and we said we'd work together, and the next thing I know, I'm in a hotel room in Iceland, having a drink and running the QY20 sequencer through a boombox. Then the next day, you've got a song. Tricky worked on two of the most disparate tracks, the lurching ugly rhythm of Enjoy, and the microbeat sonics of Headphones. All the noises in the song are just for Headphones' stereo tricks. It didn't need a lot of instruments. Tricky feels really strongly about noises and beats, and that is exactly my weakest point. Björk would return the favour and lend her vocals to the tracks Keep Your Mouth Shut and Yoga, from his 1996 Nearly God project. Hooper, though, was initially hesitant to return as producer, feeling that Björk would be better suited producing herself. In the end, he offered to stay on as a safety net, if she felt she needed additional input. That was the most generous offer anyone has ever made me. The lyrics of one of the songs, Cover Me, are about that.
This is really dangerous. Cover me.
Initial sessions for the album would take place at the Caribbean Compass Point Studio in the Bahamas. This Icelandic artist, raised amongst snowstorms and icebergs, to be recording on a tropical island, continued the contrasting essence of Post. For debut, she had recorded her vocals in a standard studio setup, but at Compass Point, she was allowed to indulge her childhood impulsion to perform amongst nature. An early version of Cover Me was even recorded from within a nearby cave.
While I crawl into the unknown.
I wanted to sing outside, because I knew everything would fall into place. Nelly made it happen. Compass Point Studio was right by the beach. I'd have a very long lead on the microphone, and a long lead on the headphones, and I'd just sit there at midnight. All the stars would be out, and I'd be sitting there, under a little bush. Upon returning to London, she realised she hated what she had made, or at least its predominance of electronic instrumentation. It seemed too lifeless. She would spend the next few months tweaking the record, as well as adding varied organic instruments, including bagpipes, trumpets, and dulcimers. I just wanted to bring the album alive. I still find it 10 times more natural for me to deal with live instruments than programmed ones, because that's what I've been doing all my life. Electronic instruments are harder to grasp for me, but of course that's the reason why I need to tackle them. Due to Björk's love affair with the Brazilian jazz pop standard Travessia by Milton Nascimento, she contacted its orchestrator, Umir Deodato, to add strings to the track's hyper ballad. You've Been Flirting Again,
Give us some time.
and Isobel. Deodato was taken aback by what she was attempting to achieve on what was essentially a pop album. She has developed a style and a music that I've never heard anything like in my life. When I heard her material, I freaked out and I said, "What are you doing? This is crazy. This is so difficult to propose this kind of style to the people." But she does, and she's successful at it. The last song to be recorded on the album was It's So So Quiet.
Well, you almost have a fit. The sky is scorching. I got hit. There's no mistake. This is it!
A cover of an obscure big band tune, originally sung by Betty Hutton in 1951.
Well, you almost have a fit. This guy is George and I got hit. There's no mistake, 'cause this is it!
Included to hammer home the genre fluidity of the album.
When my band was touring around USA for the first record, we found this tape in a truck stop, which was called Divas, with all these American divas singing songs. And this song became like the anthem of the tour. We'd always put it on before we go on stage to get excited.
Yeah, but was it a joke or was it serious?
Both.
Both, okay.
While Post musically expressed her own strength and control, the lyrics were written in a state of homesickness for Iceland, whether abroad while on tour, or in her adopted home of London. All the songs in the album, for me, are like saying, "Listen, this is how I'm doing." And that's why I called the record Post, because I always address my songs, back in my head, to Iceland like a letter. Like I have a love affair with someone, and it goes horribly wrong, and I go like, "Dear Iceland, possibly maybe."
Possibly, maybe.
Because it was such a big jump for me to move away from all my relatives, all my friends, everything I know. Possibly Maybe itself came after a period of writer's block, and as such has a less hopeful energy than the rest of her oeuvre up to that point.
Where's that love you promised me? Where is it?
Whereas Björk considers self-sufficiency and not complaining to be especially Icelandic traits,
Self-sufficiency, please.
Possibly Maybe, with its dial tone ambience, affects her trademark British moodiness.
Possibly, maybe.
Actually, it was supposed to be a country song, an ambient country song. And when I first wrote it, we got a slide guitarist in. I'm not sure it ended up as one, but that's where it started. We're thinking about that song by Chris Isaak.
What a wicked thing to say. You never felt this way.
How can you offer me love like that? I'm exhausted.
Closer Headphones was created as a tribute to the person that helped expand her knowledge of all things electronic when she first arrived in the UK.
They saved my life.
It was written to Graham Massey as a thank you. He was the best tape maker there was. He would make compilation cassettes and I would play them non-stop.
It lulled me to sleep, to sleep, to sleep.
But of course, it is also a love letter to sound. The sound of sound. Resonances, frequencies, silences, and such. A music worship thing.
I like this resonance.
The record's apex, though, may be hyper ballad. Musically, it is formed like a house track, a skittering IDM beat. Building to a euphoric, climactic, four-on-the-floor stomp.
Go through all this before you wake up.
Björk echoing its coda, the sentiment of the chorus, pared down to its absolute essence. But is also very much a ballad a snapshot of post-honeymoon romance, told as a fable.
Every morning I walk towards the edge.
About a protagonist who every morning, before her lover awakes, walks to the edge of their homeside mountain to throw whatever she has at hand off the edge as a form of self-care.
I follow with my eyes till they crash.
The girl with the car parts, bottles and cutlery. To fall in love and be in a relationship for a long time is like giving a lot of parts of you away.
Car parts, bottles, and cutlery. Whatever I find.
Because the relationship becomes more important than you as individuals. It's a bit of a tricky balance. I think everyone in a relationship needs to know not to forget themselves.
I go through all this before you wake up.
In this context, the line about throwing herself from the cliff
I wonder what my body would sound like slamming against those rocks.
acts as a metaphor for the potential death of the self when part of the couple. As such, it is the rare love song which extols having some time and space to yourself to maintain a healthy relationship.
It's become a habit, a way to start the day.
As not to be constantly living all over each other. Everything's geared towards self-sufficiency. Fuck that. For me, the target is to learn how to communicate with other people, which is the hardest thing after all. What you should be doing is learning how to live with other human beings.
So I can feel happier to be safe again.
Army of Me was released as the album's lead single in April 1995. It would become her biggest hit so far in the UK, no doubt aided by Björk's appearance on Top of the Pops, joined by label mates Skunk Anansie for a more heavy metal reworking of the song. In the US, the single was scuppered by MTV banning its video, which depicted Björk planting an explosive device in a museum due to the recent Oklahoma City bombing. It would still make number 21 on the modern rock chart. Post was eventually released in June 1995. Though peaking higher on both the UK and Billboard album charts, it would sell less overall than the blinding success that was Debut. Its futuristic sounds stood in stark contrast with the prevailing backwards-facing, post-grunge and Britpop movements. Out of the album's 6 singles, the only one without a Björk writing credit, It's So So Quiet, would be the biggest hit, becoming her only UK top 5 single.
You fall in love, sing.
While its Spike Jonze directed video would be one of the most played clips on MTV. The Smurfs even did their own cover. The Post period would be Björk's last attempt to appeal to the mainstream. In part, this was because she'd experienced her time as a pop star, and now bored, she wanted to move on to the next phase, a less dance-oriented, more avant-garde direction. I've been doing this since I was 11, and people have hated me, found me weird, loved me. You see, I've learned not to rely on all those different emotions, which means I have to do whatever the fuck I want. But also the strain of being loved on such a large scale had begun to weigh on her. After a 105-date tour to promote Post, homesickness, fatigue and the paparazzi was setting in, famously resulting in February 1996 to a visibly tired Björk assaulting journalist Julie Kaufman after she'd welcomed Björk to Bangkok. In September the same year, a letter bomb armed with sulfuric acid was posted by an obsessed fan to Björk's London home. After sending the package out, the fan videotaped himself taking his own life. Though the package was intercepted by the English authorities, the attempt on her life left her suitably shaken. I was very upset that somebody had died. I couldn't sleep for a week, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't scare the fuck out of me. That I could get hurt, and most of all, that my son could get hurt. Ending the London chapter of her career, 2 days later she would move to the south of Spain to finish work on her arguable masterpiece. The glacial orchestration and volcanic beats of 1997's Homogenic.
State of emergency.
The influence of Post is still audible on contemporary music, said David Longstreth of avant pop group Dirty Projectors. I think what I took from Björk when I was obsessed with her in high school was her way with deconstruction. She writes these classic melodies, but breaks them apart, so it's sort of up to you, as the listener, to put them back together. The song ends up meaning so much more because of the effort you have to give to it. Other left-to-centre alternative pop and alt-pop artists that have been shaped by Björk include Bon Iver, Perfume Genius, Rosalia, FKA Twigs, Purity Ring, Grimes, Solange, Ellie Goulding, Arca, Anoni, Joanna Newsom, and Tuneyards. Even Cedric Bixler Zavala of At the Drive-In and the Mars Volta has always seen her as the biggest influence on his own skyscraping vocals. Alongside being inspired by Aphex Twin, Boards of Canada and Arteka, Radiohead's pure envy of the many reinventions of Björk was what made them leave guitar music behind on Kid A. Additionally, Paramore's Hayley Williams was pulled out of her boy band phase as a kid after first hearing Human Behaviour. The chorus of Sudden Desire from 2020 is a sly nod to Post.
Just wanna feel his hands go down. Sudden desire.
When Joey Howard and I were writing the music, and he started playing that bass line in the chorus, it felt very Björk circa Post, like Army of Me.
And if you complain once more, don't look in my eyes, I feel a sudden desire.
Post's musical promiscuity is reflected again in Björk's own Volta from 2007. Its Declare Independence being a motivational industrial tune akin to Army of Me.
Make your own flag. Make your own flag.
But instead of shouting at her brother, it's meant for the Denmark subjugated nations of Greenland and the Faroe Islands. Björk continues to put out interesting and cutting edge music, doing literally whatever the fuck she wants, with little thought as to the mainstream or current trends, doing her own eccentric thing off in the corner, well known, respected, but not popular. The miracle was that somehow, for the briefest moment, Björk was a pop star. She proved that the impossible really exists. When this is all over, I'll go back to Iceland and sit with my grandchildren and these records that I have made, and be happy that I've done what I have done. And I won't miss their attention. I'll just be thankful that I took the opportunity when it came along, and didn't let it pass me by. Thanks for watching. So what is your favourite era of Björk? More into debut or Utopia? Let me know by commenting down below. If you like this video, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. Currently I have a poll on my Patreon to decide some future videos. If you want to support and haven't got around to it yet, now is the perfect time. Thank you so very much to those that already give. And I'll see you in 2 weeks' time for some more 21st century British dance punk.